Hour number 2, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point here on The Game. Tyler Head along with you, Captain Dave, producing on the other side of the glass. Again, as always, appreciate our guy Dimitri Urvanos joining us for a couple of segments there, which he'll do most Wednesdays going forward. And again, next week we'll have the opportunity to talk to him about what the NFL draft looked like, what the Panthers did, and again, if there's any hope for the Panthers coming up in the 2024 season. I teased this at the beginning of the show, and I really want to take the time to dive into this over the course of this hour. However long you guys want to discuss this. I put up a poll on the 107.5 The Game Twitter yesterday afternoon because the thought popped into my head as I was driving, and I really wanted to kind of gauge the fan base's perception of where this team sits from a standpoint of national relevance, if that makes sense. And so I posed the question on Twitter, and again, you can still go and vote for it if you haven't already. It's pinned to the 107.5 The Game Twitter account. It is, in terms of national interest, how relevant do you feel the South Carolina football program is right now? Your options are very relevant, moderately relevant, somewhat relevant, and irrelevant. Now, somewhat relevant is winning at 43%, and that is where I think South Carolina football stands right now. And I'll get to my expanded thoughts on that in just a moment. Second place, though, is irrelevant at 34%, which I thought was quite staggering. I didn't think a lot of people were going to vote for very relevant, which is in dead last right now at 4%, but I thought people would fall somewhere between moderately and somewhat relevant. So to see irrelevant sitting second right now with a third of the vote is both surprising and concerning as of right now. But I think speaks to where a lot of people's minds are with this football program right now. Now, again, I personally think this program is in the somewhat relevant category because we have to kind of differentiate here. Obviously, we are home of the Gamecocks. We're the flagship station. We talk about them each and every day. Everybody here in Columbia cares about the Gamecocks for the most part because it's what exists within our community. But outside this bubble, the question of how relevant they are is what we're trying to get to the bottom of here. And the reason I ask this question is because I feel like where you fall on the relevance scale sets a baseline for where your expectations should be, not only for a given season, but for the ceiling of where the program can get to, if that makes sense. So I feel like it's pretty surprising to see so many people down on this program enough right now to say that they're irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. That's a pretty damning thing to say about what I assume, if you're voting on this, is your favorite college football team. But I get it, though, to a degree, because outside of a few games these past handful of years, South Carolina hasn't exactly moved the needle in a lot of ways, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is when, they beat Tennessee, they beat Clemson. Yeah, you got a lot of people paying attention, but that soon, I don't say kind of wore off, but they soon kind of went back to being not talked about as much, again, outside of this little bubble and outside of the SEC as a whole. But here's my line in the sand. I feel like South Carolina is going to fall into the somewhat relevant category because they've proven they can be relevant before. And yes, I know it was over 10 years ago, but when Coach Spurrier was able to lead this program to multiple double-digit win seasons back to back to back to back, it proved something that hadn't really been proven here before, that you can win at a place like South Carolina. It is possible. It is possible to make this program a hot commodity in college football. Now, in the decades since then, there's been a lot more downs and ups, and there's been a reason why there's been 3 different head coaches in the past 10 years, because you're still trying to find that right combination that clicks. But I cannot, in good conscience, put South Carolina in the irrelevant category because I just don't think it is true. I look at programs like Vanderbilt, Purdue, You know, gosh, trying to think. There's a lot of examples of programs that are at the bottom. Indiana, I'm not trying to pick on the Big Ten here, but Indiana, you know, programs like that I think from the grand scheme of things are largely irrelevant in college football. I don't think that's not to say they can't have good moments, can't have good seasons, but when they have those moments and have those seasons, you don't believe that it's going to be sustainable, right? Case in point, Vanderbilt under James Franklin 10 some odd years ago. They put together what? 9-win season, I think in 2013 that ended up propelling him, not a 9-win season, a good season in 2013 that ended up propelling him to getting the Penn State job. But the perception around a team like Vanderbilt has always been so negative. We knew that success was not going to last, obviously. And, you know, God love Clark Lee. He's trying his best. He's an alumni of the Vanderbilt University, but nobody believes, as much as he can talk about it in his press conferences and stuff like that, which is obviously the right thing to say. They did, by the way, Vanderbilt did go 9-4, back-to-back seasons, by the way, under James Franklin. But nobody thought that success was going to be sustained. They knew it was going to come crashing down at some point. And again, God love Clark Lee for what he's doing at Vanderbilt right now. He's trying his best. But nobody believes that Vanderbilt is going to be any sort of national contender at any point in the near future, because of what that program has been for the longest time and what we know their ceiling to be. And I think South Carolina is different. I think South Carolina, again, are you in the place that you want to be right now? You're not. Last season was disappointment at 5-7 and missing a bowl game. But there's still belief, I feel like, that when South Carolina starts to put things together, that they can put themselves into one of those higher categories of being relevant from a national standpoint. Case in point, let's go back to what I mentioned a moment ago, where you beat Tennessee and you beat Clemson in back-to-back weeks at the end of the 2022 season, crashing both of their dreams of going to the college football playoff. Played a very spirited bowl game against Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. Obviously ended up losing, but there was so much conversation in the offseason, not only locally but nationally as well, of, okay, what can South Carolina do after this? Can they take that next step? You're bringing it, you know, Spencer Rattler coming back for another year, all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of belief and questioning of what they were going to be able to do with that momentum. Now, again, unfortunately, South Carolina was not able to capitalize on that this time around. But the fact that it was believable that people thought that they could turn it into something, I think keeps them above being irrelevant. And again, you ask the question of why does this conversation matter? Because I think that's where you can build your level of expectation for what this program can be going forward. If you're an irrelevant program, you hope for that occasional good season, that occasional big win, knocking off, you know, a ranked team or something like that at home, being able to storm the field, great moment, whatever, before you go back to being relevant. But I think the South Carolina program has the ability to pull off those big wins, obviously, as we've seen in years past. Those wins at the end of the 2022 season. Don't forget when Muschamp went in and knocked off a #1 Georgia on the road in 2019. Like, you have those moments, obviously, but you also have the ability to become something of a regular contender, however you want to categorize that. And that doesn't mean you're going to be playing for the national championship or even in the college football playoff at a regular clip necessarily. But if South Carolina were to jump up and have a 8-4, 9-3 season and get one of those coveted 12 spots, is anybody going to sit there and be completely shocked by it? I don't think so. Would it surprise some people? Sure. But it's believable that South Carolina can be that kind of program that can break through into that next level of college football and be successful sustainably going forward. And again, I think that's where you start your level of expectations for what this program can be. And you look at what they are doing outside of the ball being played on the field. They're doing everything else right, seemingly. They're bringing in good recruiting classes. They've brought in great guys from the transfer portal this past cycle. Like, it's believable, right? Unfortunately, and this goes back to why people are voting, or why so many people are voting for them to be, or thinking that they're irrelevant, because your dreams are almost been kind of crushed as of late, right? To where you had this almost high of high, literally the high of high this program's ever seen from Steve Spurrier a decade ago, with multiple double-digit win seasons, going to big bowl games, being ranked in the top 10, the whole 9 yards. You have not seen that success since then because the level of expectation for this program was rightfully raised to a high level. And unfortunately, outside of the 9-win season that Muschamp had back in 2017, it has not been able to live up to that success. But it doesn't mean that it can't get back there, because you've seen the blueprint for what success can look like here and seemingly how to get there. Now, obviously now we're pushing all of our chips into the table on Coach Beamer being able to get this program to that level. Can he get them back to those same heights? We don't know. But the road to get there is not this grand mountain that I think a lot of people are making it out to be, that it's never going to be sustainable. It's going to be easy? It's not. And it's going to get even tougher now that you're bringing in the programs like Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. Obviously, you're still having to deal with Georgia. Alabama's obviously still going to be good. LSU, programs like that. It's not an easy road in the SEC, but I don't think it's this insurmountable, obstacle for this program to consistently be somewhere in that top half of the SEC. Which, again, in today's world of college football, with an expanded playoff going to 12 and soon to 14 and 16 and however much more it's going to expand over the years, you don't have to be the top dog anymore. You don't have to be in the SEC championship game. You can be third, fourth, maybe even fifth in the SEC, depending on what your record is, and still, if nothing else, be in the conversation for the college football playoff. Which, again, if you're in the conversation for the college football playoff, congratulations, you're very relevant. If you're in the conversation of being ranked in the top 25 in this new college football, I think that puts you in the moderately relevant category. If you're in that next tier of team that, again, I think has the ability to break through and being in those conversations, I think you qualify as being somewhat relevant. And then we take the other 70-some-odd teams that we don't think has any chance in the world, a snowball's chance, you know what I mean, of being any of those things. That's where I think you're in the irrelevant category. And I don't think South Carolina is that far down, though it seems like some of you think that way. I want to get to your thoughts on this. A lot of you are weighing in on the Firehouse Subtext line as well as on Twitter. And again, if you haven't voted yet, you still got time. It's going to be out for a couple more hours. I want to see what these final results look like when it's all said and done this afternoon. But where do you think South Carolina falls on the relevancy scale in college football? We'll hit that more coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday morning here on The Game.